We're back. Welcome to United Road, everybody. It's been a little bit recorded today because the guest I have got today, someone who I've wanted on for ages, is all the way down in Australia. So let's get it started, shall we? I think you all know what we're going to be speaking about. Adam Joseph, welcome. How are you doing, mate?
I think there's still a bit of frustration and anger. You'd hope it had eased off a bit off the result, but I don't think it's going anywhere anytime soon. How are
I
you?
am as well as I could be, considering the weekend and considering everything that happened over the past couple of days. I mean, I know we spoke a little bit, but I actually thought there would have been some news yesterday that would have been released that we'd have probably been speaking about today, but it obviously hasn't happened. So it's kind of kept our podcast as normal, I suppose, to, I guess, speak about Spurs, dissect the game, and speak about the manager, I guess. So let's keep ourselves nice and miserable as usual, but let's keep ourselves miserable and speak about it. So, what were your initial thoughts on that Tottenham game? Because me personally, I was quite staggered at how awful we were.
I mean, nothing was a surprise after the red card, right? And I think the immediate reaction from me being part of the online Man United community
Nothing wrong with that.
um, was that
There's
people,
nothing wrong with that.
hey. Oh yeah. I just think in the immediate, you just see all these reactions going up, saying that it would be used as the excuse, the red card, and anything that happened afterwards didn't really matter to me. I mean, we were already getting thrashed, and we got thrashed afterwards. The problem for me was the first half hour. It was probably as bad as we've played under Eric Ten Hag. I mean, it's probably not right to say it's amongst the worst football we've played in the last decade, but it had that same feeling, irrespective, right? So um, it was drab, it was lifeless. We were getting torn apart. But after the first few minutes, it felt like we weren't going to score, um, and it felt like the game was over. And that sort of feeling, that helplessness, and I think we've reverted back to now. Whenever we fall behind, it doesn't feel like there's a lot of hope of an equaliser.
I think the best way to describe it is the way you just did there is, and it was quite frustrating for me, and I know we will get onto it very soon, but the manager said that we could have got back into that game if that red card wasn't if that red card didn't happen. And I don't understand what he watched in that first 30 minutes to come to that conclusion. Because that first 30 minutes, it was just like, it was completely all over the place. Everyone was all over the place. You know, to be honest, Spurs, for the quality Spurs have in their side, I was surprised that they didn't kill the game off in that first 30 minutes before the red card. And I found it bizarre that he said that, and I know we'll come on to it later, but that is one of the issues Ten Hag probably has, that is like accountability. But I just couldn't understand what I was watching. And then when the red card happened, which I suppose we could go on to, do you think that was the red card?
Uh, I mean, immediate reaction again is no. But you can understand it even if you disagree. Like I remember, this is a stupid way to explain it, but the first time I got a red card, I was really angry because I thought it was unjustified. And my captain said to me, "You put yourself in the position to get one, so it doesn't really matter." Like so, um, I can understand why he was sent off. It doesn't matter what Madison told Bruno or anything like that. At the end of the day, he did something reckless. But it's also like you said. I mean, it gave Eric Ten Hag an out afterwards to speak about those. It's the same press conferences we've been having for a while, where it's like, I'm not sure I'm seeing what you're seeing, because it just doesn't marry up. And I feel like he's very much gone into that survival mode where he'll always try to explain around things, and he doesn't like, and he really needs to endear himself to the fans as much as he can. And it feels like he's always doing the exact opposite.
Yeah, I think the thing that's frustrating for me is, do you know what? You're so right that it did give him an out. I actually saw that red card, and I think listening to it on commentary, and I don't know what commentary you get in Australia, but I imagine it wasn't Gary Neville. But Gary Neville sort of said that when it first happened, the Tottenham players were quite, the reaction was quite justified, and I think that probably helped in the decision of the referee. Looking at it straight away, I was like, really silly. Probably was a red card. looking at it with hindsight, it was probably a strong yellow card. However, I understand why it was a red. I know he slipped, but he did sort of kick out and kick him in the shin. And I just thought it was a challenge that was needless. He didn't need to make it. And I think he gave the referee the option to send him off. And I just wonder, could Bruno have used his experience there to maybe just back out? Or would it have been sort of suicide to let them attack? Like, what would have been the right thing to have done there?
I don't know what the right thing to have done there was, but it's like you said, it was reckless, and it was definitely like you could look at it in terms of the pressure Bruno's been under and the form he's been in, and just the way the team's been for 6 months plus now, and just be like it was a moment of frustration that got the better of him. I'm not sure what you think, but I did like that he fronted up afterwards and insisted on speaking on it and apologizing. I know that words fall short for a lot of people, and it's like, well, all that matters is your performance. But I like from a leadership perspective, from a captain's point of view, stepping up and taking that accountability. But yeah, in the moment, you could definitely argue that he lost his head and was massively costly for
Yeah,
us.
I mean, personally, I think Bruno is usually a lot better than that. And I thought I was disappointed. And I think the frustration came out a lot more considering the frustration. But we did not deserve to win that game. We weren't even close to even scoring. We weren't even close to creating. It was awful from start to finish. And I want to move on to something that's kind of been a real big topic because of somebody online. Marcus Rashford for that first goal, was he at fault?
I mean, yes, there's various theories. Actually, no. Let me go right back. No, he wasn't at fault for the goal. Should he have committed more to the challenge? Probably, but could he have anticipated um, the 50 or 60-yard run that followed? No. And it was more illustrative. Like I think it sort of comes back to something that I've had a problem with, and it is the scapegoating of players. Diogo Dalot at fault at the back post should have been racing back. All the space that should have been eaten up that is always available in defensive transition was a problem. To me, the goal was more illustrative of, especially off the back of the goal against FC20, was more illustrative of the problems with the system and what can be exposed. I mean, pre-game it was spoken about that Manchester United should be able to exploit the fact that Tottenham do attack and play a very attacking style, um, but instead it was completely the other way. And like you said, we didn't create anything. It was a really lifeless performance, and that was a bigger problem for me. Then I don't think anyone can thrive in that scenario. So I think pointing the finger doesn't help.
Well, so why was Rashford blamed for it then?
Marcus Rashford is a high earner. Um, he's been out of form. He's the second most mentioned footballer in no second most mentioned athlete with negative tweets in the world in the last 12 months. And because people who steer narratives, whether it's the media or fan channels, are sending fans in that direction. Like I think that we underestimate or the average person, maybe not you and I, but maybe the average fan who's not more comfortable online might not understand how narratives are directed and how easily swayed we are by people of influence. And I think that's what we're seeing with what's happening with Marcus Rashford. I'm not sure what you think, but
I think you know what I think
yeah,
you know
it's
what
just
I
more
think.
scapegoating. Yeah, yeah. I think we both feel pretty strongly about that stuff. Unfortunately, I think that it's easy, like for the media, it's easy to latch onto stuff that'll get them headlines or people will agree with, or just people will engage with at the end of the day. What can get a response from fans? And unfortunately, it's our club and our most popular players. So whether it's Bruno Fernandes or Marcus Rashford, or a new signing, we saw what happened to Andre Onana last season. Sometimes justifiably, sometimes not. What will happen now with Matthias de Ligt, Manuel Garte this week, if off only his, what would that be? His second start. Um, these things are just going to keep
Yeah, I
happening.
mean, just from my sort of perspective on the Marcus Rashford thing, and not as a whole, but just from the game yesterday. Firstly, I think it's right in saying Marcus Rashford probably didn't play amazing yesterday, but not a single one of them did. So to single out Rashford is just completely ridiculous. I think a lot of the players could probably hang their head in shame from that performance. I think the only one that probably could actually hold his head high, which is quite strange considering we lost 3-0, but it was Andre Onana. You know, I think he made 7 saves. He kept us, not kept us in it, but he kept the scoreline more respectable than it could have been. What I mean by that is it very much could have been 4, 5, 6, and Onana stopped that from happening. So he's probably the only one that I genuinely say, do you know what, you can hold your head high. For the first goal, for me, it looked like there was a sort of slight lack of communication between Garnacho and Rashford. When Rashford picked the ball up, it looked like Garnacho was going to take the ball. He then didn't, ran away from the ball, and Rashford was too far away from it to actually continue his run. But if you look when Van der Ven takes the ball, Rashford's still 2, 3 yards away from the ball anyway. So it's not as even if he was close enough to make the challenge. People's issue with it is that he didn't run back. But he would have, as fast as Rashford is, he still wouldn't have got anywhere near the player. He would have been running back for the sake of it. My issue with it more is Van der Ven, who is a centre-back, albeit a pacey centre-back, but how he managed to run through our entire midfield, run through our defence, and then how did Delo so unbelievably so leave the back post completely unmarked? And if you look when that happens, you see Delo raise his arm to almost apologise for leaving that post completely unmarked. How do people online see all of that and it's Rashford that's at fault when he was nowhere near the ball? It just blows my mind how he's always the scapegoat. And my issue with it is I feel like he's become the scapegoat. Yes, he's one of the higher earners. Yes, he's the Manchester lad. Yes, he's probably the poster boy. But the abuse he receives, and you alluded to it a second ago. But Rashford is the second most negative tweeted about on Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it now. Why? I don't feel like he deserves to be. Do you think there is a narrative that has been created around him from particular channels out there that have used an agenda against him to cause so much toxicity and so much negativity that he's almost abused to a point that's just completely ridiculous?
Yeah, I do, and I think it. I think that also comes from people see what they want to see. So if someone doesn't rate Diogo Dalot, that'll be their focus. But yeah, with the Rashford thing, I think that's mostly agenda setting. It generally comes back to if someone doesn't, I don't know, portray themselves the way that we want to, or they don't cooperate with what we want from, say, um, taking interviews or not talking back when they're criticized online. When they stray from that, they tend to be targeted, and that's what Marcus has done. He's spoken out against critics. He's spoken out against abuse online last season when he did that interview with the Players Tribune, um, and that just it seems to attract people more. So you know, unfortunately, sports and fandom is an irrational thing, and when it comes to that stuff, we get even more irrational. I know years ago I made plenty of mistakes, and I've tried to learn from them now, which is why I implore people not to abuse the players and just keep it to like rivalry banter. But the way that online fandom is sort of trending towards more and more player abuse and then finding ways to justify it is it's a
It's
little
more the way
scary.
they criticise and abuse. Sorry, the way they abuse the players, but then try and justify it as criticism. I find it bizarre that is kind of the excuse regardless. But when a player's not playing well, you can say, "Oh, they're not playing well," or "He could do better," or whatever. But it's when it sort of becomes personal and whenever Rashford seems to do any kind of interview or anything, and it's probably similar to Harry Maguire as well. But whenever they seem to do some kind of interview, it's always PR. Yet if one of their favourites, like Garnacho's probably off the top of my head, But whenever Garnacho does some kind of interview or video of him training, it's never PR. It's, oh yeah, he's just getting back to his best kind of thing. But when Rashford does it, it's PR. Just focus on your football, or focus on this, and it's just like the guy can't win. He's either not in form, so tries to improve his form, and it's PR, or he's in form and he's still shouted at because he's not running back on one defensive play or something. It just makes no sense. But in terms of obviously going back to the Spurs game, was you almost kind of relieved that it only ended up being 3-0?
I mean, one thing I do want to say as well, when you mentioned PR, something that drives me nuts is that people don't seem to know what PR is. So when Marcus did the training content during his international break, the better thing to do, like a PR firm would have advised him to post nothing, to just keep his head down and see out the storm, or just stay out of the public limelight. Don't post anything on social media. That would be the PR move. There is no good PR for him to do unless he would be doing interviews with fan channels. Things like that would get him on side with the fans, that sort of thing. But yeah, I implore people to actually learn what PR is before they use the
that's
term.
what it always is online, isn't it?
But to come back to, sorry, I
it's
had
always
to say
it's just PR, and it's like, I don't actually think you know what that means, do you? Because it's not PR. Because if he was actually properly advised, they'd advise him that if he puts this out, people like these would just abuse him for it, regardless. So the correct PR or the correct marketing or the correct marketing advice would be, don't put this out because it will just lead to this.
Yeah, I think we like personalities from sports stars and famous people, footballers, whoever it is, until they show us something we don't like, and then we lynch them for it. It's really depressing. But sorry, to come back to your Spurs question. I mean, relieved. It's like you said, Onana saved us something from more disgraceful. I don't know if it's relieved. It was more of a numb feeling for me. Like, this is more of the same. And I know they spoke about this on Talk of the Devils earlier this week. It was just like that familiar feeling of, we've been here before. We've had these feelings, these low points. I know we've had plenty of low points in the last decades by our own standards. But it was like, here we are again. Are we really here again with all the hope that we had early in Eric Ten Hag's tenure? And then I think that there's going to be up and downs in this new Ineos tenure, and backing him in and knowing this season was going to have its highs and its lows, but to have them like back-to-back home games, have Tottenham and Liverpool score more goals against us in one game each than we've scored at Old Trafford this season in the Premier League, that is. It was too familiar a feeling for me, I reckon.
It was.
What about you?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the relief, I think it was probably, at least it wasn't 5, which is a horrible feeling, really. But there was a stat I saw that actually made it quite real after the game, that we've only scored 1 goal at Old Trafford this season in the Premier League. I think, is it only Southampton have scored less or something in the league altogether?
Yeah.
It's quite mind blowing. I can't find the stat. I think it was 1 goal at Old Trafford all season, at home all season, and it was in home and away. I think we'd scored the second least amount of goals. Only Southampton had scored less, who are currently bottom of the league on 1 point. When I've seen a stat as well. The last 20 Premier League games, Everton have more points than Man United. If you were to, I think we've got 19 points. They've got 21. Now, I've not actually researched that, so I don't know how accurate it is. But the fact that you believe it makes it think, wow, we haven't been good. And 19 points in 20 games, if you double that, that's the course of a Premier League season. You're talking about 36 to 38 points. That's relegation form. And it kind of brings me nicely to my point, and it's never something I like doing on podcasts, and it's never something that I take pride in doing, but it's hard to kind of ignore. But is Eric Ten Hag on very much borrowed time? Is the writing on the wall for him?
Really tough question, isn't it? And it comes back to that 20-game sample that you talked about, which I think has 5 wins in that time. I think we picked up, I'm pretty sure, if I remember correctly, we picked up 19 points in that time. And yeah, I think that he is. The complication being that because of the change in ownership, the backing in, the sort of like fresh slate he's sort of got, it does make it a bit complicated. And I think that's what I know the chats I've had since Sunday, that's what's been the real divide, because people are either like staunchly with him, staunchly against him. And I've definitely moved to more the losing faith camp. And I think he is on borrowed time. And I think that, like you and I have spoken about offline, that expected some sort of news on Monday. I was hoping even the new leadership of the club might have spoken up, given some clarity, some backing. But it doesn't give you a lot of hope, or you sort of feel like, again, borrowed time going into Porto and Villa. I'm not sure what you think, but I think because of the quick turnaround, maybe that's why they couldn't act. And with the international break after the Villa game, maybe that gives them 2 weeks prior to the Brentford game. I'm not sure what you think.
Do you know what? I think it's a really good point that you make that, really, because there is such a quick turnaround, and with the international break coming, there's obviously if you were to make the change, that would be when you'd do it. But my issue is 2 results against Porto going to completely flip what the club is doing? Because my concern really was, and I know they went out and had a look at other managers in the summer, and I'd still argue that he probably got a little bit more time because he won the FA Cup. But the expertise of Ineos and the expertise of the people that they've brought in, I should say, is I don't think that decision should have been based on an FA Cup win. I think it should have been based on a performance as a whole. It should have been based on the season. Because I know Solskjaer said it best, but he sort of said that trophies could be sort of an outlier of where you actually are as a club at the moment. And I understand we had injuries last year, but I still don't believe we were the 8th best team. And I still think we should have done so much better in the league. And I think the FA Cup did buy him time, and I think you can sort of understand why they've given him that opportunity, because although he wasn't probably great in the league last year, I feel like he probably deserved a go at the job with a correct structure in place. However, what needed to happen this season, was after the backing from the transfers to the extension of his contract, he needed to come out in the league and say, look, last year wasn't good in the league, but this year will be fine. And 7 points after 6 games does not say, I have turned this around. And I'm sorry, with a new structure in place and with the backing that he's had and with the new managers that have come in across other clubs as well, it doesn't take 3 years to get any kind of implementation of a style of play. And I hate that saying, because it's so modern football, but we shouldn't be playing the way we are. There's just no way we should. And when you see the likes of Enzo Maresca, who's coming to Chelsea, and the absolute chaotic atmosphere at that club, to then put them in fourth with a decent team, getting them playing in a good way, in fourth position after 6, 7, 8, 9 weeks in charge. You then look at Arne Slot, who's coming at Liverpool, who, yes, is probably, you could argue, inherited better players. But those better players he's inherited, Van Dijk, Salah, they're in the 30s now. They're in the final years of the contract. So it's not as if they've got some up-and-coming young squad that he can completely tinker with. He didn't have a good transfer window either. They signed a goalkeeper that's remained out on loan. They've signed Chiesa, who's not really played that much. And yet he seems to have implemented a style that he's been able to get into the players who, let's be honest, have just had a manager in Klopp who they all loved and bought into, and same with their fans. And I don't like praising Liverpool, but it's true. And Arteta, yes, he took time, but he's only won an FA Cup. But I think a lot of fans would probably go, well, look at the progression we've made. Look at how we play. We are so close to a Premier League. And the only reason you could probably argue that they've not won is because of, charges and things against City that have allowed them to have a squad that can go that extra mile. So just makes me think, after 3 years, United should be so much further ahead than where we are. And yes, I know we had injuries, and yes, I know we had the Glazers, and I know we had the ownership problems. But it doesn't take 3 years. It does not take 3 years or 3 seasons to actually implement any kind of plan. And it just seems like the players they've either give up on him and are refusing to do his plan, or they don't know how to. And if they don't know how to, that's a worry, considering how far into his tenure we are.
Yeah, I think I was thinking about the players giving up aspect, which has obviously been a bit of a narrative the last 24 hours with the report from Sammy Mockbell and Chris Wheeler. But for me, I don't think that my personal opinion is I don't think that's the case. I think they don't understand. And what that comes from is Eric Ten Hag has his squad now. Like those are his players. I just don't see them giving up on him. He has a lot of loyalty. I just think it's either they don't understand the system or the system just doesn't work with the players that he has. And either way, it's a problem. And I think something that buys people like Mikel Arteta time is he had a clear and identifiable style and identity. And that's what Arsenal fans love and defend about their team. When there's criticisms about them being boring, and you look at the Manchester City game as the most recent example of that criticism. And it's the same with Arne Slot. He's come in with a clear and identifiable style. You can't say that about Manchester United after 3 years. Like we had those two disastrous first games against Brighton and Brentford, and Eric Ten Hag quickly figured out with David De Gea we couldn't play out from the back, and he compromised on his principles to get results. And it sort of feels like beyond that, he hasn't been able to give us an identity. And for a club like Manchester United, who's had one for so long, that's a real problem. And I don't see how that changes.
Well, the thing is, and I think it's hard as a United fan as well, because I think we always are desperate to get back to that so-called yesteryear of the success we had, and I get football cyclicable. I think that's the word. But we've got to face facts that we are a long way from that, and it's frustrating, and I do understand that. The thing that my issue with Ten Hag, and there's been a slight argument, and I know somebody online said this, but you can't sack the manager because these players have always got managers sacked. But just there's an account online called Oliver Esona. He's really good account out there. He
One of
just
my
made the point.
favorites.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he made the point on Twitter. I've just got it up here that 6 of the starting players in that game were signed by Ten Hag. He signed 4 of the 5 substitutes he used, and he has been backed. I'd also like to say as well, what's frustrating is I had it up the other day. Someone in our group chat put it, but there's been 380,000 messages since. Onana was signed by Ten Hag. Dalot had a new contract that was approved by Ten Hag. De Ligt, Martinez, Mazraoui, they were all signed by Ten Hag. Kobe Mainoo came through the academy but was brought up by Ten Hag. Ugarte was signed by Ten Hag. Fernandez, new contract approved. Rashford, new contract approved. Xerxes, signed by him. Garnacho, he's been here a little while, but he came through the academy, approved by Ten Hag. That was his team. It was Ten Hag's team, and you can't go back with the narrative that all these players got all these managers sacked, because they didn't. You know, Rashford's probably the only one from the previous managers, from Van Gaal, but there's a reason he's been through those managers, because on his day he has the potential to be incredible. It's not him that's got these managers sacked. He's not been performing to his best, but Rashford isn't the be-all and end-all to blame for everyone, as some people would have you believe. That was his team, and the frustration for me is, at what point do we go, it's not worked, or this was his team, he has no excuses anymore? Last season he had the injuries and the ownership issues. He doesn't have injuries. He has Luke Shaw out injured, and I think that's it, to be honest. So what do we do next? Do we stick with it? Do we wait till the international break? Do we sack him in the international break and put Ruud van Nistelrooy in charge, and then go for somebody better in the summer? Like, what is the next? What is the plan? Because it seems like at the minute the writing's on the wall, and we're kind of just waiting for that little bit more time because of the quick turnaround of the games.
I think that's the most painful part is it does feel like you're just waiting for the penny to drop. So are they just waiting for the international break because there's no time to implement anything? I'd like to think that if we are turning into more of the elite sort of organization we're supposed to be, that they will have a contingency in place should things have not worked out. So maybe we'll know more in a week. But right now we're in this holding pattern, and I think it's almost worse in a lot of situations like these when you don't know what's going to happen. I think it's the unknown. So I think that's a big part of the problem. But again, like you said, you've also defeated the narrative that it's not his squad; it is his squad. These are his players now. It's clearly his team. We've spent a considerable amount of money over 3 years assembling a team that's his, and I definitely think that that just doesn't hold weight anymore. So I don't know where we go. I think two very clear defeats lead us to an obvious place because I believe we're only, what would it be, 4 points above the relegation zone right now, and if we were to lose to Villa, I'm imagining that gap closes. We're 13th now. Where will we be in a week? And then the decision might be made for them. But yeah, like you said, I don't know if they win. It's hard to envision them winning with some style, both of the next two games. I don't know why that would. Oh, I mean, it would change things a great deal. It's just very hard to have faith in. Going to Porto will not be easy. They're not the side that they were, but going to the Estadio Draga, Australian
Yeah.
accent, sorry,
Put
but
put the accent in.
yeah, no. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I imagine this is a very different chat next week. Maybe it'll be exactly the same, but yeah, right now we just got to wait.
Yeah, well, I mean, in terms of Adam Crafton did a tweet. I'm just sort of name checking all these journalists and Twitter accounts, aren't I? But he kind of made a point that he doesn't really understand the who is out there argument as well. Like, is there anybody better? Because he sort of alluded to Liverpool and Tottenham's pursuit of managers. Because if you think about it, Slot probably wasn't. Slot wasn't Liverpool's first choice. I think it was Xabi Alonso. Postecoglou, I don't think was Tottenham's first choice. You know, they had to compromise on what manager they got, but you could argue that is probably really. I mean, it's probably debatable slightly with Spurs, but I'd still argue that they're a lot better. I know they've not had the greatest start to the season, but Spurs are definitely a lot better. Arne Slot's come in; he's done very well with Liverpool for over the first 6 weeks, 7 weeks. So, and Adam Crafton just says Man United are bad under Ten Hag over an extended period. The idea that no one better is out there is absurd. And somebody mentions about charisma, and is that not a big problem for Ten Hag? Because it does seem to. Do you think there's a charisma issue with him, and maybe he just can't get. He can't motivate his players? Just playing devil's advocate, do you think that's potentially something that's an issue for him?
I don't know if I can speak exactly to the motivation aspect, but he's clearly got communication problems with the media. It doesn't get him on side with them. He's clearly never been able to win them over. You see how clamped down on his press conferences are from a media perspective. I don't think anyone gives credit to the fact that he hasn't adjusted to learning a new language and how to communicate effectively. So yeah, I think there is a charisma issue, even just handling I don't know how you put it, handling the challenge of being the Manchester United manager, which is a lot to take on. Like it's a lot more than just managing the team. I hate using this term because it's all over social media these days, but the aura that comes with that, I think there is something that very few managers could take on, but maybe that'll change in the Ineos structure with hopefully with Jason Wilcox and Dan Ashworth. To maybe they'll become more prominent over time. They did speak a little bit early in the season and particularly over pre-season. Well, Barada and Ashworth did, so maybe that'll change. But I think there is weight to the argument that the charisma aspect is a problem because I think man management is more important than it's ever been. I think being a good man manager in an era where you have to be more sensitive to your players' needs and probably their emotions most of all, it's a different challenge now than it was, say, a decade ago when we had the first managerial change. So, yeah, I'm not sure, and I think that's a frustrating part too, is that we don't have the answers and we speculate, but ultimately, it's so out of our hands.
Yeah, I'd probably agree with that. I mean, don't really want to spend the whole podcast talking about Ten Hag, but obviously the sort of scenarios going around at the moment seem to just be the case that it's such a big topic and it's such a big debate about whether he stays or whether he goes. Personally, I'd rather hope that I'm wrong and he does turn it round and we go and win everything. It's just hard. Ultimately, you have to take things at face value at the moment, and what we are seeing at face value just isn't good enough, and it's not been good enough for an extended period of time now. So I think that the frustration that I'm seeing online from some people is that you're not a Manchester United fan because you're not backing your manager. I think we are backing our manager, but we are also criticising what we're seeing and thinking that maybe a change is maybe for the best at this point. Again, hope
Well,
I'm wrong. I hope
you want to be wrong, right?
I want to be wrong. I never ever want to criticise a player or manager and turn out to be right. I'd always rather be proven wrong and them go, yeah, you were wrong. I don't want to be right. If you know, I never want United to lose a game. I never want a manager to lose his job. I never want a player to be sold because they're not good enough. I want them to be able to turn around and go, do you know what? No, I am good enough. But sometimes, but you have to take things at face value. And what we are seeing right now as fans deserves to be criticised, and it deserves to be criticised because of how long it's been going on for. And given the backing he's had and given the structure that's been put in place, he had to turn things around in the league, and he just hasn't done that. So at what point do you go enough's enough? But I do want to move on to one of Eric Ten Hag's signings, Manuel Ugarte. Obviously, we spent, I think it was £50.7 million. Was it pounds or euros? I can't remember now.
Yeah, pounds.
Yeah, was it pounds? I don't think it was like 58 million euros, but £50 million, we're in England, so whatever. Well, I am. There was a lot of concerns around how we played and because we have such a chaotic play style at the moment, because we don't know what's going on. A lot of people who I think are a lot better than me at being able to analyse football aired some concerns about how we'd be able to fit in. Jack Fawcett, Zach on Twitter as well were two in particular. They aired the concerns that although he's a great player and a great destroyer and someone who can really break things up, he's not somebody that can probably progress the play that good. He's not somebody who he's probably not the best idea for Kobe Mainoo's partner. And I think, and again, I wanted them to be wrong. I wanted Ugarte to come in and quash those concerns. And I know it's still early days, so there is obviously a hell of a lot of benefit of the doubt to give him. But have these concerns been quashed for you, or are you a little bit worried for him?
No, I think when coming to the Premier League, you have to give them a little bit of rope, and give them a chance to bed themselves in. I do have concerns. I find in tight spaces his first touch can be a little heavy, which means if he turns the ball over, it's generally in the most dangerous part of the field for transitions. But probably the other part again is the transition of the ball, or the progression of the ball forwards. But I like how much space he can eat up in a short period of time as a destroyer. But the problem is any midfield signing this summer was going to come in as the messiah for all our midfield woes, and he is not that.
Yeah. And he's not
And
that.
we all know that, yeah, and we all know that another midfielder, like people are dreaming about Adam Wharton from Crystal Palace, and another midfielder is going to come in, and he'll probably revert from, say, being, in Football Manager terms, he'll probably revert from being an important player to a regular starter, into the role he's supposed to be. But I also think the way he's being utilised now, and the way that most players are being utilised in the squad now, is a no-win proposition. Find me, apart from players we are not capable of signing, find me a handful of players who you could drop into that chaotic environment and that chaotic play style and ask them to succeed, because you aren't going to find many. That's why I've been so defensive of the players, because it's a system problem, and eventually you can only rely on talent for so long. And we saw Kobe Mainoo get injured on the weekend, and yeah, it's only a matter of time until you run out of moments of brilliance.
Joe, it's a really good way of putting that, actually, because the individual talent and the brilliance of some of the players can only last you so long. And then when the system has fundamental flaws, it's only a matter of time before those flaws sort of show themselves to the world. And I think we actually have started to see that. I do feel for Ugarte, because you kind of spot on, really. Him as a midfield signing this summer, because of the form of Casemiro last season, because of how good Mainoo was, because we were so desperate for a partner for Mainoo, any midfield signing was going to come in and be, oh my God, he's going to transform us. And so many people did air concerns about Ugarte, not in terms of a bad way, but he just wasn't going to be the answer to those problems. And because he's been misprofiled so much, whether that be from fans or from Ten Hag or even from Ineos, I fear for him because he's not had the best start to life at United. And again, I know it's early days, so there's a huge benefit of the doubt on him. I do worry for him that, because I personally think he's probably more better as a lone six, or sort of a base of the midfield. I don't really think he should be a pivot kind of, or a double sort of base of a midfield. But again, because he's being misprofiled, it seems like him and Mainoo are kind of doing that. And I do worry for him, and I hope something changes soon. I think a lot of fans, and again, we're only fans, we're not managers or coaches or scouts or anything, so we're not by no means experts. But I think a lot of people were quite surprised that João Neves from Benfica was so sort of available, and we've sort of given PSG their money to then go and sign him. You know, we've kind of subsidised the fee for João Neves when a lot of people were saying he would have been better for Mainoo. So again, there's a frustration there as well. I just think it's quite annoying and it's quite shit knowing that we're only in September, October, and it just feels like the season's been written off again. You know, the hope has kind of been absolutely dragged out of us after 6 games, and it's not what we want as fans.
Well, there was so much optimism, and I know how much I was looking forward to the season. It did feel like a bit of a clean start, and the optimism from the FA Cup final carried over a bit, and it went so quickly. You know, by the time we were away at Brighton, and it was gone. So I guess that's what sucks. And again, like you said, it feels like it's lost, and we've just started October. I don't think all is lost, but I think it's like I said that Saturday was a pivotal game. It's a defining week now. Whatever happens, but I'm nervous in the sense that I don't know what the plan is. If things go really badly over the next 2 games and they do sack him, what's their contingency? So do they hire a short-term manager to then bridge the gap to the long-term manager? It's a real point of interest.
Yeah, I would be curious to see where we go, to be honest. I mean, Porto on Thursday, Villa on Sunday. They're not 2 easy games at all, especially away at Porto. Villa coming up, obviously they're in very good form. I think in terms of the league, Villa are, because Unai Emery's got them playing great, but they're 5th at the moment, 2 points off the top. You know, behind Chelsea on goal difference, only a point behind Arsenal, 2 points behind Liverpool. You know, that they're really solidifying a place in that sort of conversation of the top 6, 7. I mean, if you really wanted to, you could probably say Villa and Newcastle are making it a top 8 almost with the backing that Newcastle have now got. You probably add them into a top 7. Villa playing the way they are in terms of football results that are making them kind of solidify a place where they are. You could argue that there's 8 clubs in the league now that are going for top 4 places. You know, it's no longer a top 6. You could say it's a top 8, top 7, top 8. So it's not going to be an easy game. I know United tend to do quite well at Villa Park, but obviously, and hopefully we do, obviously, but form kind of goes out the window, and you kind of just hope we can get some kind of result, but, you know, we'll see. I just wanted to go on to one final point, and we spoke about this a lot privately, Adam. There was videos circulating online from some content creators that obviously there's links with agencies to particularly YouTube channels, and Rasmus Højlund was actually name checked in terms of him reaching out to a particular channel to obviously, you know, he's obviously gone on there, done an interview, and now the player that is playing instead of him has now started getting tweets and a little bit of an agenda against him. How do we rectify this? Because in my opinion, it's quite dangerous and it's quite toxic, and I don't ever think this club can move forward with the toxicity that is being created by them.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. It's something you and I have both been very outspoken about. You know, when I talk about this sort of thing, often I get just ignore it or go away. That's no longer that's no longer an option when something is as of this size. You know, if you have if you're sick and you have a virus, it isn't just going to go away.
Yeah.
If it's a serious illness, and I think the equivalent is pretty similar here. I think it's really dangerous when people are posting opinions they don't believe because they're being paid to. Um, you know, and that video that was posted yesterday was damning in the sense that that is an ex-employee posting firsthand knowledge of things that are going on. It's confirmation of things that we already thought. But that there's your PR. That's paid PR. That's what that is. That is agents getting in contact with people to do favorable things. I know in my experience when I was working in the media, you do favors for people you're on good terms with, whether it's an agent or people at a club. Your story might be angled favorably. It's the same in this sense, except what this does, it influences the people you follow to do the same thing. And I
Yeah.
think we don't, it's like when, we follow the accounts we really like and we learn from them and we trust them. That's exactly what's happening with fan content. And that's the danger of that content creation, is that it's unchecked in that way. So it is important that people speak out against it. There's always going to be criticism that comes back. You just have to ignore it. I get sucked in and I respond. Um, and people think that it's for self-interest, but what we're criticizing is the self-interest involved. You're using the football club that you claim to love, that you claim to support for your own personal benefit and ultimately profit. Like, we're talking about someone whose net worth is now in the millions, because of this decade-long journey. So it is really dangerous, and it encourages people to do the same. We're already seeing the problems with the engagement model of social media, and what that can earn you, to the point where it's not just copying tweets anymore. It's sticking gambling templates over the top of things, which I'm fine with. Get your money however you want, but at least say what I think at least believe what you say.
Yeah.
There has to be an authenticity to it, because there's a real danger, and it's a black hole.
It's the best
Sorry,
way
that
to
was a
say.
tangent.
No, it's kind of the exact way of describing it, really, because it's quite obvious that some of these accounts don't believe what they say. And my concern with it, and a big issue with it, is a person who clearly doesn't support the club is using the club, and was also videoed with an interview, who said he started doing United more so because it got him more views, and then with more views it got him more engagement, and with more engagement it got him more money. And the thing is, so many people out there, and it's like a bingo card of, oh, you're just jealous, oh, you're obsessed, and it's like, no, there's a genuine toxicity and danger. And when you have a platform in what this person has, you have a duty of care to not only the players but to your followers, and you have a genuine responsibility, because a lot of said followers will be young and impressionable, and they will see that you have such a following. And when you address your following in the abusive manner that you do about the club you claim to support, those young impressionable people will then start to do the same thing, and they will start to do the same abuse, and it won't even be known, and they won't even realize they're doing it, but it will be constant, and it will be over and over, and that will affect the players. And that isn't what you should want. What's best for your club, and you abusing these players and doing it in this way is not what's best for the club. It's not what's best for the players, because it will be in their heads. And I know there's an argument, oh, you should be mentally stronger and all that, but that's complete rubbish. If you are going to constantly personally target people, and it's not the jealousy. I tweeted yesterday, but it's not the jealousy or the obsessiveness. It's the hypocrisy that none of us can stand. You know, the arguments around Ten Hag hit that he shouldn't be sacked. Yet Ole Gunnar Solskjaer should have been sacked like that. It's the De Gea and Andre Onana, and these are just examples off the top of my head. But it's the Andre Onana versus David De Gea. David De Gea was statistically letting goals in that he should have saved. And although he was the best keeper in the world 5, 6, 7 years ago, he wasn't when he left, and it was statistically there for everyone to see, and it was everyone with an eye could see that. And I love David De Gea, but it was time for him to move on. Yet Andre Onana was the worst signing we could have made and the worst decision we could have made. Yet he was man of the match on Sunday for Manchester United, because he made 7 saves, and I think he prevented 2 extra goals going in. In the 7-0 against Liverpool, 3 goals went in because of David De Gea. So you look at the statistics there and you go, well, how can you defend one but not the other? Oh, it's because you have an agenda. Which brings me on nicely is that's another reason why he's such an issue. The agendas. The agenda around Marcus Rashford is quite sick at this point, and it's quite obvious because Marcus Rashford called that channel out for the malicious rumours and lies that they were spreading about him. And he called them out for it, and he couldn't stand it. Harry Maguire was another agenda that he had for so long. He said that it was PR, again, it was PR that a bomb threat was sent to his house. That is vile. Absolutely vile. His family and children were in that house, and he's trying to say that it was PR because a bomb was sent to his house. That isn't justified criticism of a player. That is genuine abuse and agenda of a player you don't like because he may have been out of form. It's vile. And then the abuse as well of the likes of McTominay, Maguire, Marcus Rashford, Andre Onana, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer for years. These are all reasons why we don't like this person, and it's all reason why we think his channel, and there's also people associated with his channel who are not only hypocrites, but have shown that they support people that they shouldn't have supported. And I mean, players that were sold by United who realistically probably should have been released, but they supported them. You know, the likes of Anthony saying, you know, it's awful, 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 and the channel needs to be disbanded. Not disbanded because, look, they can do better. I'm all for fan creation. I'm all for fan media and content creation. So disbanded is a strong word, but they have to do better with the responsibility and the duty of care that they have, and that is my issue. And I think and I also want to make it clear that Rasmus Højlund came from Italy. He's also Danish. He wouldn't have understood the sheer magnitude that this channel has within the fan base. He's probably just seen them online, and Shane, a friend of mine, actually said this, and it kind of made me see the light. That was a good point. That Højlund wouldn't have seen the sort of toxicity and the abuse that this channel has done and carried out. He's probably just seen a fan channel and thought they were all serious fans and wanted to get involved because he thought it was good for the fans. And I completely understand that.
But he might just be a young kid who wants to be liked, you know? Or it's, again,
exactly.
like we were talking about earlier, it's just good PR for them.
Yeah, you know? Exactly. And I think there's also a responsibility that we need to make sure that we don't attack Højlund for that, because he probably just didn't know any better. He probably did just want to be liked. And again, you can do that. I don't think there's any issue with it. But again, there's a duty of care to actually say what you genuinely believe. And I don't think some of the things they say they believe. So, you know, there's a major fracture in the fan base at the moment. And I think they are a very big part of it and why there is such a big fracture. And unfortunately, as you know, as a channel, and there's many good United channels out there, and I think this channel has such a scope to be better. It's just a shame that they are choosing the route that they're going down to cause such issues within the fan base. And like I say, I think it's been obvious that I've been so outspoken about it for so long. I know you have as well, Adam.
The last thing I wanted to say, sorry to cut you off, that I think that people underestimate their own responsibility. I know we talk about accountability in the media, but when you're in the media, you do have a code of ethics that you follow. And I remember once I posted just what I was hearing about some feedback that a player had gotten, and it was pretty sensitive. It was probably stuff that should have stayed in-house. And what happened was someone who followed me actually said that to a player at the game. And I consider myself fortunate in hindsight to have been confronted that player and have a chance to have a conversation with them. Happened a couple of times. And I think that's why it's sent me in the direction that I'm now in. It's learning from those mistakes. So like you said, they have an opportunity to be better and take their platform and their influence more seriously. Because at the end of the day, these are human beings. Social media has never been more prevalent. And we have no concept of what it's like to deal with that sort of toxicity and abuse. You think your own mentions get bad when a tweet takes off. Say I tweet something about City, or I tweet something about someone who I have an issue with and what comes back, that's nothing. That's nothing. That's an hour of an athlete's mentions, so we should really keep that more front of mind.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think just alluding to something that I just said about sort of players, obviously we know Mason Greenwood wasn't convicted. So he, obviously there's an element that we have to be fair and just around that. It's also the same with Anthony. He was never convicted, so there's also an element that we have to be fair around that. I just think the way they conducted themselves around those particular issues, I don't think was brilliant. So it's just really important to get that out there for obvious reasons. But I just think as a channel as big as they are, I think they need to conduct themselves in a better way. I think they need to really address the way they speak about the players, speak about the managers, speak about former players and former managers. And I think it's kind of as simple as that, really. But I wanted to finish on that because I thought it was a really important issue, because it does seem to be getting to a point where it's filtering through to impressionable people and young people, and I don't want them to think it's the norm to be able to do that to people and to do that to players, especially in an age of mental health as well. So I think it's just really important to address that, really. But Adam, it's been an absolute pleasure. Hopefully we have another podcast very soon where we've won a load of games and we can be a bit more positive. It does seem to have been a bit of a negative return to the United Road, but obviously there's been a bit of a break. Obviously I've moved house, I've got engaged, I've been on holiday, I've changed jobs. It's been a bit of a chaotic 6 months, to be honest. But hopefully we are sort of more regular now, I suppose. And writing is going to be returning very soon as well. Adam, where can people find you?
Yeah, just rambling, really long posts on X or Twitter. Adam Joseph with 4 underscores, because my name is just that common.
I've had to just shove that underscore right at the start. I managed to get away with it. But yeah, obviously make sure you check out Adam's stuff. He's really good on Twitter. Obviously check me out at _Callum Stone. There is going to be more podcasts coming. Not sure on the gas next week. I've got a couple of feelers out there, so I will announce in due course. Really happy to say that the United Road has officially returned. Obviously, wish in better circumstances. Also, to give you an update on the blog site, the blog will be returning. I'm looking at getting some guest writers. If you are interested, feel free to drop me a message, and we can go from there. But thank you very much for watching. Adam, thank you for joining me, and I will see you all very soon. Cheers.